NATO is discussing the possibility of shooting down Russian military aircraft that intrude into the airspace of alliance countries, a source familiar with the matter told The Telegraph. According to him, when deciding whether to shoot down a fighter jet, the proposed factors include whether it carries ground attack missiles, as well as the aircraft's flight path. NATO Supreme Allied Commander, Europe, Alexus Grinkevich, also proposed creating a unified air and missile defense system to eliminate national reservations, restrictions imposed by individual member countries on the use of their weapons. The issue of new rules of engagement will be discussed at a meeting of NATO defense ministers. Prior to this, according to Financial Times sources, alliance countries proposed easing restrictions on pilots patrolling the bloc's eastern border, allowing them to open fire on targets violating their airspace. This idea was put forward by Eastern European countries, supported by France and the United Kingdom. Earlier, NATO's Secretary-General Mark Rutte stated that the alliance is prepared to use force, but only against Russian aircraft that pose a direct threat. In late September, NATO representatives warned Moscow of their readiness to shoot down Russian aircraft intruding into their airspace. The heads of the British, German and French embassies noted that Russia was deliberately violating their airspace with combat aircraft and drones. According to a Bloomberg source, a Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson responded that such incidents were a response to Ukrainian attacks on Crimea, which would not have been possible without NATO support. Moscow officially denies any involvement in such incidents. Russian Presidential Press Secretary Dmitry Peskov called to shoot down Russian aircraft irresponsible and warned of the dangerous consequences of such actions. Last month, NATO held 2 emergency Article 4 meetings after separate Russian provocations in both Estonia and Poland. When 3 Russian MiG fighter jets crossed into Estonian airspace, modern Italian F-35s were scrambled to intercept them. Moscow's warplanes were ordered to leave before being escorted to the international border in what insiders have described as a textbook response to the incident. Recall on September the 19th, Estonia announced that Russian MiG-31 fighter jets had entered its airspace and remained there for 12 minutes. The Russian Ministry of Defense reported that the aircraft had flown from Karelia to an airfield in the Kaliningrad region. During the flight, they did not deviate from the agreed-upon route or violate Estonian airspace, the Russian military asserted. If Russia decides to attack a NATO country, its military facilities in Kaliningrad and Sevastopol will be destroyed within hours. This was stated by General Ben Hodges, former commander of US Army Europe, in an interview with the VOTTAC project. He noted that a clash between Russia and NATO would not be similar to the war in Ukraine. If Russia had attacked Poland in 2025 the same way it attacked Ukraine, it would have been destroyed by NATO air forces and alliance ground forces. One can be certain, Kaliningrad would have been destroyed within the first hours. In the first hours, Kaliningrad is gone. All Russian facilities have been destroyed. Any Russian military facilities in Sevastopol have been destroyed as well. Therefore, direct comparisons are inappropriate here, Hodges stated. He also noted that in 2014, when the war began, Europe, the United States and Canada generally supported Ukraine, but many countries were still too dependent on Russia for oil and gas supplies. People said, "Don't be dramatic. Russia is an important country. It has nuclear weapons." And back in 2014, we failed to make it clear that Russian aggression would not go unpunished. Even the Minsk agreements turned out to be a farce. No sanctions changed Russia's behavior. It had no respect for these measures, Hodges noted. He also emphasized that if NATO countries had been better prepared and had immediately, after the start of a full-scale invasion, clearly warned Russia that they would give Ukraine everything it needed to restore its sovereignty, if that had been our clear goal, the situation would have been completely different, and Ukraine would have found itself in a different position. Instead, we wasted years of conversations like, what if Russia uses nuclear weapons? Maybe we should negotiate? We could negotiate Russia's withdrawal from Ukrainian territory, Hodges emphasized. Earlier, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte emphasized that a potential war between the Russian Federation and NATO would be different from the war currently underway between Russia and Ukraine. We hope this will never happen. But if Russia is foolish enough to attack us, it will be an open war between Russia and NATO, Rutte said. According to him, a possible war between the Russian Federation and NATO would be different from the war currently going on between Russia and Ukraine. It will be different from the war between Russia and Ukraine for many reasons that I can't explain in detail now, because we don't want to give them an information advantage. But this war will be different, he noted. According to ISW analysts, Russia has launched Phase 0 in its preparations for war with NATO. They noted that the discovery of so-called little green men on the Estonian border indicates the formation of an information and psychological platform for a possible future military conflict. Russia had hoped to quickly take control of Pokrovsk a year ago, but the operation to seize the city has turned into a shameful meat grinder with no end in sight. This is what Alexander Kovalenko, a military analyst with the Information Resistance Group, wrote in an article for Oboz Revitel media outlet. He noted that in 2025, the task of capturing Pokrovsk not only remained relevant, but even more important, it was necessary to demonstrate to Donald Trump that the Russian army was advancing rapidly and therefore, he argued, he needed to quickly accept the Kremlin's demands before it was too late. However, for over a year now, a 100,000-strong Russian force has been languishing on the outskirts of the city. The only visible success for Russia in this direction was the so-called Dobropilya breakthrough, but it too came with a surprise. As Kovalenko notes, although the Russians managed to penetrate quite deeply, the result was not the collapse of the Ukrainian defenses, but rather the Russian troops being trapped in a pocket, exposed to fire from all sides and lacking stable logistics. At the same time, attempts by the Russian command to exploit the success in the Dobropolye breakthrough area by introducing additional forces there only led to a sharp increase in losses. Thus, the Dobropolye performance, which began 2 months ago, turned into a meat grinder for the Russian occupation army, leading to the loss of combat capability of several battalions and the collapse of the entire Pokrovsk sector. But it also resulted in the weakening of other sectors from which the missing forces and resources were being drawn, Kovalenko writes. The analyst notes that the offensive on Pokrovsk not only failed to bring Russia any significant success, but also led to significant depletion of the entire Russian force. To save the Pokrovsk sector, Russia was forced to ease its pressure on the border between the Sumy and Kursk regions as well as in the Toretsk area. Currently, the Pokrovsk sector is occupied by approximately 130,000 Russian troops, but even with this highest concentration of forces, the Russians are unable to take this regional center. However, Kovalenko believes that Russia does not appear to intend to abandon its plan. Recall, the situation along the front line between Pokrovsk and Kostiantynivka has become somewhat clearer in recent weeks. In August and early September, only a handful of videos from this area were published, mostly showing Ukrainian counterattacks against Russian units that had penetrated deep behind AFU lines.